A true leader to me is someone whose measure of success is rooted in doing good for others, not just achieving results or looking a certain way or showing up, right? But uplifting people in the process of how they lead. The way that you act and hold yourself is contagious to others, and they start to look at themselves and ask themselves questions about what kind of leader they could be and how they could do good for others.
Welcome to the True Leadership Podcast, where we sit down with executive leaders to explore what leadership really means through the lens of their stories, their wins, their struggles, their vision, and their lessons along the way. I'm Ty Hammond, founder of One Mountain Leadership and creator of the True Leadership Approach, an awareness-based path that helps leaders shift their focus from what to do about their problems to how to grow from them. Whether you're just stepping into leadership or are well-seasoned and at the top of your game, your potential won't be realized following someone else's script. But you can draw insights from their stories and turn it into wisdom by putting it into practice in your own life. Welcome to the True Leadership Podcast, where we explore the essence of leadership beyond tactics and performance by sitting down with executives to hear what matters most to them. I'm your host, Ty Hammond. Today's guest is Oakley Smith. Oakley is a visionary operations and client experience leader with a proven record of transforming organizations through strategy, structure, and service excellence. As Vice President of Operations at Vetty, she leads global fulfillment and vendor management initiatives that elevate client experiences worldwide. With over a decade of experience across healthcare, hospitality, and technology, Oakley is known for blending operational rigor with a human-centered approach, driving performance, inclusion, and innovation across teams. Her leadership reflects a passion for designing systems that work for people and businesses alike, turning complexity into clarity and ensuring excellence at every level of the customer journey. It's a pleasure for me to have Oakley on the podcast today. Welcome to the show, Oakley.
Thanks so much, Ty, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So I always start here. Every leader, of course, has a beginning. Who we are as leaders at work and in life starts taking shape long before we advance to any executive position of leadership. I'm curious, who's someone from your early life or an early experience that really shaped the kind of leader that you are today?
Sure. So thinking back, when I think of the first leaders that I ever knew, my grandmother and grandfather, my Nana and Papa, as I like to call them, immediately come to mind. So growing up, especially in my teen years, I watched their work ethic and the different expectations that they set for themselves and others. It wasn't always about perfection. It was about showing up, caring about what you do, and recognizing that your work is a reflection of your character. So my grandfather's story in particular, it still inspires me. He started literally by laying railroad tracks with the CSX Railroad, which of course is hard physical work, right? And step by step, he built a career that eventually led him to a leadership role with CSX, their Operation Lifesaver program, which is focused on educating others about railroad safety and rail track safety. So he landed that role right after working so hard to get there. But what stands out the most to me isn't the title he earned, but it's the leader that he became along the way. He connected deeply with the people around him. He was a great listener. He advocated for those who needed a voice. He opened his worldview and then became a Freemason and a Shriner, not for the clout, the recognition, but because he believed in service and community. And for me, he was the first example alongside my grandmother, my Nana, supporting him along that way of what true leadership looks like in practice, not, the loud, flashy, leadership, right? But it was rooted in integrity and empathy.
I love that.
Yeah, thank you. He's great. They're great. They're, cheering me on even still today. So, as I grew in my career, I was also very fortunate to encounter others. So I have three main mentors. Shout out to Rob Bride, Mike Desperano, and Lisa Molnar. They are fellow professionals and executive leaders who taught me how to think like an expert operator, how to be data-driven, strategic, and intentional. And they also taught me something just as crucial, which was to always keep people's experience with you, your product, and your company top of mind. They taught me that leadership isn't just about the work that you're doing, but it's how people feel working with you.
Well, I love that you have several different examples there. I'm hoping to go back actually to your relationship with your grandfather, and love hearing about his transformative journey through leadership. Could you say more about your particular relationship with him? Sounds like he's still here, might even be here listening to us share today. What is it about in his relationship with you that really informs how who you are as a leader and how you lead today?
Yeah, I'm sure he will listen. We are connected on LinkedIn, so he'll see this. But he just in everything that have seen him do and still see him do today, uh, he is always just challenging me to think of myself and how I could give more to others and how I could expand my worldview, to think about different perspectives. I mean, I can go back in my memory bank to my early days, maybe when I was, 5, 6, 7 years old, him taking me to the Shriner paper sale. So we'd go to a grocery store in Nashville. That's where I'm originally from. And we would pass out papers to customers coming to the grocery store to raise money for kids who needed operations and who had been burn victims, so the kids that Shriner support. He took me to those paper sales and would carry me on his hip and have me passing out papers, and leading a group of other Shriners to do that work and, ideally get some donations from folks to then go on and help children. So there's a whole host of other memories I could speak to, but far and wide, he has just been this constant beacon of leadership for me. And I think about him all the time in the decisions that I make and how I go about being a leader myself.
It's so powerful to have those models, especially from, such impressionable ages. And, I hear it so often, of course, from leaders and, my father, my mother, my parents, and but just how incredibly powerful it is to have that model, someone showing us, not just telling us. Yeah. And
Absolutely.
I'm curious, of course, this podcast is exploring the essence of leadership, what we call true leadership. Of course, it's going to mean different things to different people. So what does true leadership mean to you, and what makes a true leader in your eyes?
Sure. I think a true leader to me is someone who isn't afraid to have big ideas and collaborate with others to make them real. It's someone whose measure of success is rooted in doing good for others, not just achieving results or looking a certain way or showing up, right? But uplifting people in the process of how they lead. And I think that when that is your focus as a leader, it's a beautiful thing. It becomes contagious almost, right? Where you aren't on an island being this leader doing these things yourselves. The way that you act and hold yourself is contagious to others, and they start to look at themselves and ask themselves questions about what kind of leader they could be and how they could do good for others. And should their definition of success be that stereotypical, nice things, etc., right? They start to think maybe my definition of success should be the good that I inspire others to do or the good that I give to others. And that to me is true leadership. When someone is leading with purpose and possibility, I think it inspires everyone to think bigger, care more deeply, and believe that change is really possible.
I'm going to make an assumption here that one of those three mentors that you acknowledged earlier have something to do with your sense of what makes a true leader. And I guess I'm curious to probe a little bit more deeply here to see if there's a, particular memory or story or something that you can share about one of those folks that really brought this definition to life for you.
Absolutely. I've already shouted out my papa. Shout out to Mike Desperano. He's going to listen to this too, I'm sure. But in my experiences with Mike in my prior company, HHS, they are a provider of non-clinical support services in healthcare spaces. So think housekeeping, food nutrition, maintenance, etc. Mike, my good friend and mentor, he started his career with HHS as a floor tech. So someone who would, operate the machinery to clean the floors, keep them shiny, all the things. And he worked his way up over a 13-year span through his leadership and influence to become an executive vice president. So he, in that time and my interactions with him, I could see how that happened because he was someone that didn't just connect with people in the boardroom, right? Or to the higher ups. He, of course, had an incredible executive presence, but he connected with those around him who were contributing to the vision and the mission and those who were doing the work. One specific example I remember that absolutely inspired me, and I started to operate this way myself, was that when he was rounding in a hospital, we were rounding together and I was observing him. This is when I first started with him. He went up to a housekeeper who was cleaning the room in a way that maybe he shouldn't have been, right? It was a training opportunity, let's say. And he went over to this person, and rather than being a manager and reprimanding them, or saying, "Why'd you do this? You should have done it this way," right? He came to this person human to human and approached them in a way that was observational, and it didn't assume anything. And he asked questions, good questions, to get to know that person and their thought process and why they did what they did, even though, we knew it wasn't correct, right? So he asked those questions, and come to find out, we understood, that person thought that this was the best way to clean it for XYZ reason, right? And rather than just telling, he decided to show and tell. So he put on gloves, he went in with the equipment into the patient room and said, "Housekeeper, this is what, we would want to do, and here's why." And he demonstrated what he was expecting rather than just walking around and barking orders. And I had not seen that kind of leadership before. I had seen leaders around me who would like to, go and they knew what to do and they just kind of talk the talk about what they should do. And I think Mike was one of the first people in my career that connected with people where they were at and really managed them up and helped them become better, not just in the moment, but all around. Someone who inspired greatness through not just his words, but his actions.
Well, such a powerful story. And boy, I think dropping assumptions, curiosity, and modeling, that's coming fairly close to leadership mastery right there. With through that example, such a especially powerful story. Of course, life and leadership is a path really shaped by fundamental turning points we encounter along the way. These turning points, right, can be a specific moment in time. They can occur over longer periods, but I'm curious to hear you share about a time when you realized that your current way of leading or living no longer really met the demands of your work and life, and you really needed to grow.
Sure. So I think that, there's not just one kind of critical moment, but two that really helped shape me and helped me to pivot in the right direction from a leadership perspective. Number one was COVID. So let's talk about that. We'll unpack that. I think everybody has a COVID story. But for me, my COVID story was that I was leading a team out in the field for HHS. So we would go into hospitals, observe, kind of care behavior and make recommendations from a quality perspective to drive outcomes related to patient experience and the metrics associated with that. So when COVID happened, we were not considered bedside essential, right? We weren't doing IVs and providing direct patient care. We were support in the hospital. But with that said, we were pulled out of the hospitals, all of them. We were in and out of hundreds of hospitals at that point. So we were pulled out, and our company realized that we had a lot of value. We were, doing great work, but had to repurpose us into a different area to provide support in a different way. So we then, having no experience in HR or anything of the like, were put into HR support roles, leading an hourly recruitment program. This was the time of COVID, if people remember, where people were wearing scuba masks to the grocery store and, like taping towels around their mouth and stuff like that, right? Early COVID, let's say. And people did not want to work in the hospital, right? It was scary to them, rightly so, right? It was all over the news and very disruptive and terrifying. And we were put in a role to recruit for hourly roles in the hospitals when the teams needed people the most, right? When people, would not stay in those roles for very long, or those roles stay open for a long amount of time because people were so scared. Over the course of about 3 months, we were able to place over 3,000 people in different roles across the nation to provide support for those in the hospital and our teams in the hospital. And after that, they recognized that we were doing something really impactful. And they approached me and said, "Hey, Oakley, we would like you to move to Texas and take over this program for pre-employment screening within a different segment of HR. So doing all of the background checks, OCMED, et cetera, occupational medicine, for all of these workers, right?" So my husband and I, and then our newborn, moved to Texas from Nashville and pivoted. And I led a new team, had developed a completely new set of skills. And I think that really helped shape me in a way that I hadn't before, because if you had asked me before that time, a few years before that time, if I would accept moving into a role like that, or would have adapted the same way, I don't think that I would have. I don't know if I would have responded the same way. And yet, COVID and all of the circumstances surrounding that time, it drove me to be more adaptable and resilient and formidable and open-minded. And it led me to a place where now I am, the operating leader over a background screening company. Who knew, right? That starting from there would lead to here. And I don't think I would have gotten here if I hadn't gone through something like that.
So wild, these career trajectories and how they work. I'm curious if you can, it's my sense that as we grow towards new capacities and, deeper adaptability, for example, we have to let go of or grow beyond, a limited or other way of being. I'm curious in that moment, that opportunity of growth that COVID gave you. What did you have to outgrow or let go of in order to become that adaptive leader ready for this next opportunity?
Sure. I think that I was very set and felt really great about who I was and what I knew and how I could use what I knew to find success, right? And I even think at that point, maybe my definition of success was very different than it is today after some of these kind of turning points in my career and experiences. So I think that that's where I had to grow the most, was maybe expanding my worldview and learning to say yes more than no, and being more open to exploring different possibilities, meeting new people, learning new things. I think that was really the starting point for me in doing so.
But that kind of learning and growth really requires a commitment. I'm thinking about your journey over the past few years. What's been the most valuable investment that you've made in yourself and for your own growth?
Well, speaking of which, I think that the biggest commitment to myself and how I've most invested in myself has been to not turn down an opportunity to learn something new, to meet someone new, or just to try something completely unfamiliar. I would consider myself to be an early adopter in most things. And I love creative thinking and new ideas. And, I have now, over the last few years, tried to meet new people and learn their perspectives. And it has helped form who I am and shape my perception, my opinion. I try to leave those doors open because I think in doing so, you just become a more well-rounded leader. So, saying yes has really opened so many doors for me, not just career doors or the traditional kind of networking doors, right? But doors into rooms where people are genuinely trying to solve complex problems at a macro level, across different teams, companies, and even entire industries. The truth is, I think the worst thing that can happen is failure. But when you look at failure and you change your definition of failure and see it instead as a learning opportunity, I think it becomes a lot less intimidating. And instead, it becomes a stepping stone. And then suddenly, courage feels achievable.
I'm curious, what's your own vision for your leadership, your legacy, or the impact that you want to have in the years ahead?
Yeah. I think my long term vision as a leader is pretty simple. I really want to inspire others to open their worldview, learn new things, and then lean into situations that they may not fully understand. So for me, teaching and mentorship play a huge part in that. When I can help someone learn something, like Mike D, did to me, right? When I can help someone learn something new or challenge their way of thinking in a way that unlocks creativity or resilience or confidence. That's when I feel most fulfilled as a leader. So my goal is to help people grow in ways that make them more well-rounded and more capable of navigating whatever may come next.
I am right there with you. I'm curious, what are the ways that you most need to grow to help other people realize their own vision of growth in this way?
Of course, I am definitely still growing too. I think we all are. So for me right now, I'm preparing for the next step in my leadership journey, which would be one that allows me to influence more people, products, and processes. Regardless of title or what that looks like, I think in its entirety, that's what I'm focusing on. I want to strive to be a better communicator, collaborator, and strategic thinker. And honestly, I carry something with me that Mike used to say in every performance review for any team member he had, which was, we can always learn to communicate better with one another, which is a simple statement and a simple concept, but it's a guiding principle for me. And I think the longer I go in my career, even leaders who have been doing this for a really long time or, have written many thousands of emails, been on many thousands of calls, done speaking opportunities or otherwise, there is still something to say about
Of course, that clarity in communication is something that leaders are constantly looking at. It's so important in your own communication style, in your own journey of clear communication. What's the edge for you right now? What's the opportunity for you to communicate more clearly that you can see?
Yeah, I think that, just my guiding principle around wanting to be more strategic, when I'm communicating now and where I see myself wanting to grow even more is incorporating some of these big ideas and strategies that I've got in my head to be better said when I reach my mouth, right? So it's sometimes I think hard when you're being strategic and visionary to communicate your ideas in a way that is passionate, but also clear, so that others around you feel bought in and feel that it's something that they want to be a part of. For someone with a vision that is incredibly passionate about what they do, sometimes I feel like I have to, taper that down a bit to make sure that what I'm saying is clear, and that everyone is on board.
Well, it truly is a craft, and especially as leadership, vision, and responsibilities change over time, we just continuously have to be refining that craft for sure. Of course, the path of leadership is also determined by where and how we meet our growing edge, our challenges. I'm curious, where do you feel the most tested right now? What challenges are stretching you the most in leadership or in life?
Sure. I think that within my leadership journey, some of the biggest challenges I'm looking to or working through at this point have to do with the introduction of many new technologies out there in the workspace. So, AI is a big topic right now. So, how are we looking to learn more about AI, leverage AI in a way that we feel comfortable with, which is a topic I think everyone's trying to get a good grasp on. For someone who would be an early adopter like myself, I would love to learn more and integrate it all right away, right? But there are rightly many people who don't feel comfortable with it yet, and some who are very slow to adopt for good reason. And so I think that is a challenge right now that I am facing, um, which is, how much of these new technologies should we use and leverage, especially within the background screening space, to, drive up our metrics, drive down turnaround, um, just to find success in that space. So I think beyond AI, things are relatively table stakes. Of course, the economy, we're all, trying to figure that out and what that means as leaders for our companies, for our personal lives, et cetera. But I think within the professional space, especially, it's how are we going to use this brand new tech that is pretty cool, maybe a little spooky, to make our lives easier and our work better.
Relative, I feel like this is such an important conversation. I would think you'd be hard pressed to find many leaders out there who aren't thinking about this to some regard, right? In the AI space, so there's the how we use it. That's the like application of AI. I'm curious if you'd be willing to, what is your sense of like the leadership that's needed within that conversation? There's the figuring out how we use it, but then I also heard you speak to you know different levels of people being willing to adopt it, some folks who may be more resistant to other folks who may be a little bit more on board. I'm curious from a leadership perspective, a person having a team and navigating all of these things, what's the challenge or the opportunity there?
So I recently went to a conference where one of the hot topics for our space was AI. And this was a leadership conference. So people just like me, with all different types of feelings and worldviews and perspectives on AI use and beyond, gathering in a room together to talk about what the future of the industry looks like with AI. And I think that one big problem we're looking to solve or a challenge is how regulated should this be? Because to me, right now, AI and its associated, topics feels a little bit like the Wild Wild West right now, where we are at this point where content is being pushed at us all the time through social media, through other avenues, and we're at the point where we're like, is this real? Right? Was this even real? Was this ever even a person? We have AI actors and AI singers and all kinds of things. And I think that when you work in background screening like I do, that can be very concerning. So these are people's livelihoods that we, hold in our hands when we are making determinations about what to put on someone's background check report, right, or their consumer file. And so to have all of this looming technology around, I think that there are minds out there that would say, hey, we need to regulate this a little bit more. We need to pump the brakes a little bit because until we get a handle on it, it could have some downstream negative effects on candidates who are looking to get jobs or loans or apply to get an apartment, things of that nature. I also think though that if we move too slow, that we will just fall behind, not just other industries but just in general. I think that we'll fall behind in our ability to serve consumers and serve candidates in the way that they're expecting if other industries, other companies are adopting it more readily than we are. So the challenge there is finding that happy medium. And even in a room full of leaders who have their own perspectives on this topic, I don't know if we even walked away with too many answers. There's still a lot of unknown.
It seems to me that one of the greatest jobs in leadership is simply navigating uncertainty, and boy, do we have plenty of it with the advent of AI. So thank you for articulating that challenge, and perhaps the opportunity is to just get more comfortable within that uncertain space. So
Absolutely.
this last question is a little more of an invitation. You have the time and the space here to offer to our listeners whatever it is that's most in your mind and heart to share right now, anything at all. Take your time. The floor is yours.
Thanks. Well, number one, thank you again, Ty, for the opportunity to be here and to have this really great conversation with you and get my thoughts and perspective out there. To thank those who have helped shape me and my leadership journey, and to celebrate how I've become who I am today. So very appreciated. I would say everyone's leadership journey starts somewhere, and there's beauty in that beginning, but there's also the struggle, the sweat, and discomfort. And I think for anyone who is just entering their leadership journey, I hope to say that that's okay. It's okay if you're going through that, because that adversity will shape you. That is something that will allow you to watch your ideas come to life as it shapes you. And the one common thread that I think I've seen among the best leaders, like I said, whether they're just starting out or decades into their career, is that they find the courage to step out of their comfort zone. And to anyone listening, I attribute much of my success to doing exactly that. Don't be afraid to try. Don't be afraid to learn. Don't be afraid of the unknown. And dare to be different. Your leadership journey may be a byproduct of that, and it might just surprise you.
Well, Oakley, I so appreciate the wisdom that you've shared here today with me. I've gotten really so much out of it, and I'm sure that whoever listens here today is equally going to benefit from what you've shared. Thank you so much for being our guest on the True Leadership Podcast.
Thanks again, Ty.
That's it for this episode of the True Leadership Podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can subscribe to YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this to catch future episodes. This conversation was brought to you by One Mountain Leadership, where we help leaders grow the capacity, confidence, and presence of true leadership through the True Leadership Approach. To learn more about the approach, our offerings, our community, and how we can help you realize your potential in both leadership and in life, visit us at onemountainleadership.com.